If you're paying for traffic and people aren't buying, the problem isn't your ads. It's what happens after the click. Most visitors won't buy on the first visit. That's not a guess. That's how people psychologically behave. So if you're not capturing them or following up properly, you're just burning money to get them back later. I spent hours going through how top agencies and top operators build these flows. And the reality is, it's not complicated. Everyone doing this well follows the same core structure. So I'm going to show you how it actually works and how simple it is to build it. Most brands think that their core problem is the traffic. Well, it's usually not. The problem is what happens after the click. So someone lands on your site, doesn't buy, and leaves. And that part is normal. What's not normal is not having a system to potentially capture them when they leave. The fix is simple. You capture the visitor, then you follow up properly. Instead of trying to force the sale on the first visit, you convert them after, when they've had time to think. A welcome series is the first set of emails someone gets after they subscribe. The goal is to potentially turn that subscriber to a paying customer. This works because of timing. These people, they've just signed up and their interest is at a sky high because they took the time out of their day to opt in. They're paying attention, but they haven't made a decision yet. That's the gap that this flow is built to just close. Most welcome flows don't fail because of effort. They fail because they're structured poorly. Generic emails, no direction, and too much said all at once. Nothing is actually moving the decision forward. So when you actually look at how strong brands do this, structure is always consistent. You deliver what they signed up for. Then you build confidence. Then you show why your brand is the better choice. And then finally, you give them a reason to act. So now I'm going to show you what this actually looks like in Klaviyo. Then we're going to break down what each email should be doing. So I'm in my Figma board now, and I'm going to show you exactly how the welcome series should be structured in terms of emails. So the first email is going to be doing the heaviest lifting in the sequence. It needs to deliver the promise immediately because the subscriber just gave you access and expects something in return. That's why the code is visible right away and the CTA is direct. Then we show a small set of bestsellers because most people do not want to sort through the whole store. After that, we add proof and risk reduction because attention by itself is not enough. The goal here is simple. Deliver the value, direct the choice, reduce hesitation, and make the first order feel extremely easy. We then move on to email number 2. This is where we stabilize the belief. The first email got their attention, but now the question becomes whether the product is actually worth trying. That's why this email is proof heavy. We're using short testimonials and user-generated content to make the product feel real, used by others, and liked by other people. Then we reconnect that proof to a CTA and a product strip so the buyer has a direct action to shift their belief into a purchase. This email is less about hype and more about making the purchase just feel safe. We then move on to email number 3. So this is where I break the pattern and send a text-based email. Not because design is bad or frowned upon, but because changing the format changes how the message feels. Instead of another polished promo, why not just make it look like it came from a friend? This reads more like a note from the brand, and the job here is to explain the problem the brand was built to solve and the standard it wanted to hold. That humanizes the brand and gives the buyer a reason to care beyond a discount. The CTA stays soft because this email is supposed to preserve trust, not overpower the reader. We then move on to email number 4. By the time someone gets here, they're comparing. They may not be comparing in a spreadsheet, but that's what's happening in their head. So this email is here to organize that choice for them. The comparison block and the key differences section are not about attacking competitors. They're there to make the buyer's decision easier by clarifying what this brand does better and why that difference matters in real time. Once that distinction is clear, the CTA has more weight because the buyer is no longer choosing in a fog of smoke. We then move on to email 5. This is the point where the reader has seen the brand, the proof, and the differentiation, but still has not moved. This is where a stronger or different offer can make sense if the brand can actually support it. So the key is that the improvement has to be real. If you use an increased offer here, it needs to be credible. Psychologically, this is loss aversion. The buyer already understands the value. Now the question becomes whether they want to lose access to a better reason to act. The next email, if the brand cannot or should not raise the offer, then this email can be used to deepen familiarity instead. This version is more relationship driven. It gives the reader a reason to stay connected, follow, or keep engaging without forcing a purchase before they're ready. The point is not to replace conversion, but to stay relevant and repeated low pressure exposure. Makes the eventual purchase just feel more natural, even if it happens later. Last but not least, we have email 6. This is the final email. At this point, we're not introducing anything new, but we're making the deadline unmistakably clear, repeating the code, removing friction, and giving the buyer one more clean path to act. That's why the offer details come early and the CTA is prominent, and the trust and value cues are still present. Urgency works best when it's paired with clarity and reassurance. This email should feel decisive, not chaotic. It's there to turn accumulated intent into action before the window closes. I'm using a real account here as a demo, so this doesn't feel theoretical. The goal is to show you how the actual build and structure is inside Klaviyo. So you head on over to flows, and then you're going to create flows. Then you're going to build your own flow. Once you do that, you're just going to name it welcome flow or welcome series, and you're going to create manually. So once you're in the builder, the trigger is simple. Someone just joins your main newsletter list, and from there, I'm going to want to have a few basic filters in place. They need to be able to receive email marketing, and a person should have bounced an email 0 times over all time and placed an order 0 times over all time. This matters because the second that someone buys, they should leave the sequence and move into the post-purchase. The welcome series is there to get the first order. It's not there to keep selling to someone who you already converted. So now for the actual structure. You're just going to drag and drop an email. You're going to want to send this email out immediately. This is going to be your most important email because it's hitting when intent is the highest. The job of this email is simple. Deliver the offer right away, make the next step obvious, and send people somewhere easy to shop. Usually it's bestsellers or it's a strong starter collection. Right after that, I like adding a conditional split. This conditional split is for non-openers of the previous email. So email 1, we resend that same email with a different subject line. The condition itself is what someone has or has not done, open an email 0 times over all time, which basically just means the previous email being opened. So you're just going to add the time delay, and then you're going to drag and drop another email, which is going to be a resend of the previous email under the yes path. Also like to add a 1-day delay. Under the no path, we're going to send the second email because these people already clicked that email. Now we're going to want to send them another email. And this one is there to build confidence, reviews, testimonials, user-generated content, otherwise known as UGC, and anything that makes the product feel more credible and lowers the hesitation of a buyer. After that, email 3 is where I usually shift the tone a little bit. It's going to go out 2 days later, so you add a time delay for 2 days, and this is more of a personal email, usually more text-based. The job here is to explain why the brand exists and what it was trying to do better and make the brand just feel more human. Then you're going to add another time delay. This is going to be email 4. This is your differentiation email. And by this point, the buyer is comparing whether they realize it or not. So this email should make the choice easier by showing what actually feels different about your brand and why that difference matters. So from there, email 5 is going to depend on the brand. I send this about 60 hours later, but it depends. If the brand can support a stronger offer, stronger incentive, this is where you can increase it and give people a better reason to act. If not, this slot can be used to deepen the relationship. So email 5A is an incentive increase. I would put a 60-hour time delay for that email to be sent. For email 5B, where the relationship is just being deepened, I would put a 2-day time delay. The last email is the close. This is the final reminder of all emails. This is when the offer is ending and the code is repeated clearly. And the whole point is to make that last step as easy as possible for someone who was already close. So nothing new here, just clarity, urgency if it's real, and one clean path to purchase. If you're using the incentive increase, you're going to want to delay that sixth email or the final email about 1 day because the window is shorter. If you're using 5B for the relationship deepen email, you're going to want a 2-day time delay.